Hey there everyone, today I'm going to show you how you can use MakeCode for game design in Minecraft Education Edition. Okay, so this video is kind of similar to some that we've been putting out lately. I'm going to go through how you can use MakeCode, so specifically block coding, to introduce something like game design. There's actually a OneNote that goes with this as well. I'll put a link in the description. So specifically designed for teaching students computational thinking around coding, and then it progresses into a bit of the command block work as well. But essentially, we're going to go through and have a look at how we can use this coding in this particular way. So the very first one we're going to have a look at is how to give someone something. And keeping in mind, there are lots of ways you can kind of trigger the process to happening. I've just kind of created some silly scenarios in which it could possibly work. So in this case, what we have here is that we want to give our player an item if they break the block of gold that's in front of us. So our agent here is telling us that we need to create this event whereby they're given a torch when they break a block of gold. So let's hit C on our keyboard and that will open up our coding options. And we want to choose this first one. We're going to use MakeCode. There are other options there as well, but we're going to look specifically just at block coding. And then what I'm going to do is I've kind of created one here already, but you can create a new project. And we're going to have a little, like a project, like a canvas space for us to work on. Now, what I want to do is that I want to find what we call an event handler, because all our code must sit inside an event handler, the thing that causes the code to run. So in this case, we're going to break something. Now you've got two options. You can kind of click through to get used to where they are. In this particular case, this one here is under blocks because I need to break a block, and it's sitting here. This one here that's highlighted yellow, it says on grass block broken, which we can change. But the other thing you can do is you can start to search. So if I start to write the word break or broken, we can see that it will kind of shorten that list, and that there is the one that I want. Let's zoom in one there. Now it's going to default to grass, but we just click down here and then I can change this to gold. There it is, block of gold. And so that change is made, nice and simple. The next thing we want to do is give. And so give is actually a tricky one because give actually sits in mobs, which seems really weird. But again, if you just search for it, so we write the word give, and there it is there. So if we pick this up, place it inside our event handler, it says we're going to give the nearest player, which is perfect. So the default is perfect. You can change that if you needed to. We're going to give them a block or an item. In this case, we don't want to give them grass. We want to give them a torch. So we search. There it is. And we're just going to give them one torch for now. Now, like all good code, we want to test it. So down in the bottom right-hand corner, we're going to hit that green play button. We're going to come here. And what we're going to do is we're just going to break this block of gold. And then you'll see down in my hotbar, I was given a torch. It wasn't there before. I've got another one there, which is meaning my code is working. Let's mix it up. Let's say we wanted to try and change things here. We want to change the code to give your player 3 shovels when the block or when the gold block is broken. So let's just go back to our code and make that change. So here, instead of a torch, we want to give them a shovel. So we can start to search, but what you'll find is it's not there. So you can access more. And what we do is we click down here on blocks, and we look for this one, item, okay? So we pick this up and we pop it over the top like so, and there it is there. And so all the items actually sit separately, and so you need to put that specific little block over the top for it to work. In this case, we're gonna give them 3 shovels, so we're gonna change this 1 to a 3, and then we're going to go and hit play button to check it, and I'm gonna break the block. And there we go. I've got 3 shovels sitting in my hotbar now. So we can change that up as well. Our last one here is to change it to give them 3 gold ingots. So if we wanted to do that, we could hit code. we can change this around as well. We would just change these items. So remember in this case here, there it is there. I can hit play on that, break it, and I've got 3 sitting there now as well. The next one we're going to have a look at is called the detect code. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create 2 scenarios here. We've kind of got a little bit of a maze, but we're going to put up a little chat message saying that either you've gone the wrong way or you've gone the right way. So in this case, let's go to where it says detect 1. So we're going to move over. Here we are here. We've got our little NPC and we've got this gap here, but that's important. I'm going to click on here and it says it's asked us to build a code that detects a gold block 2 blocks below the player. So it's going to give us some gold blocks and some other blackstone blocks to tidy up our work. I'll show you that in a second. And we need to place those gold blocks on the yellow blocks below. So just a little bit of scaffolding here to make this a bit easier for us. So again, we want to put them down here, and I'll explain this in a second. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back and we're going to search for detect. So let's start writing the word detect. There it is there. So we're going to pull this one across like so. But the problem we have here is that it needs what we call our event handler. Now in this case, I always want it to be trying to look for and detect this blocks. So the keyword there is forever. And so if I search for forever, which is also what we kind of call like a loop, so it's constantly looping and running, that will be our event handler. So I'm going to pop it up and that's going to grab in just like that. So forever just means it's always going to be working. This code is always going to be checking. Now we want to check 2 blocks below. Now this little default here, these 3 zeros are your position in the world. Okay, so they're your X, Y, and Z position. And so the middle one is your Y, it's your up and your down. And then the little squiggly line in front, the till sign means relative to where you are. So in this case, wherever you're standing is always your 0. But we want to check to see if there's a gold block 2 blocks below you. So that is -2. So it's always, as I'm going anywhere, it's always going to look 2 blocks below me. And essentially, if it picks up or finds a gold block, so let's make that change. Gold block. So if it's found, it's going to run a command to say what. So in this case, it's the wrong way. So let's change that over to saying, I don't know, let's go wrong way. Maybe wrong way, go back. Wrong way, go back. Whoops. There we go. And now we've got to go finish and set it up, and then we can test it. So let's hit play. I'm going to grab my gold blocks. Now, if you look at this, we've got, even if I break these out, I'm standing at 0, which means this must be -1. That must be -2. Okay, so that's why we wrote the -2. So let's just replace that back, fix it up again. And we're going to put our gold blocks down here. So they're now -2 blocks below. And we're going to cover that up so we can't see our work. And essentially what we do is we want to walk over the top. Now, because those gold blocks are 2 blocks below me, it's coming up saying wrong way, go back. Okay, so there's that little message for us. So I'm going to make my way back, go to the other side, and essentially here I can repeat the same thing, but I would have to use a different block. I couldn't use gold again because gold will always give that same message. So in this case, let's think about it. Let's go back to our code. And what we can do is we can grab code and duplicate it just like this. But let's use a different block. We're going to use, let's go with emerald. Still -2 blocks below, but in this case, let's write something like correct way or something. You could really write whatever you want, just as long as it's kind of makes sense to your game. Corrector, that will do. So in this case here, I'm going to then grab an emerald. There we go. Let's place that down there. And essentially, I've got my little message there as well. So that is our detect block, and basically it's giving us those on-screen messages. Our next one we're going to have a look, and it gets a little bit dark in here, is the effect block. And there are so many options here, so I'm just going to pick one, but you can kind of let your imagination go wild as to what you may want to do here. But essentially, this maze keeps going, but it gets very dark, which means it makes it very difficult to actually finish the game. So what we're going to do is we're going to give our player an effect of night vision when they climb a ladder. So let's close this. Let's look at our coding. And what we're going to do is we know they're going to climb. So let's search climb. And it might need... So what we know is that we know that it's going to be when the player is doing something. So let's do it this way this time. Let's click player. And we want this one here. It says on player walk. Now they're not going to be walking. They're going to be climbing. So let's change it to climb. And so that will cover us. That will be what will trigger the code that we put inside here. And so what we want to do is apply an effect. Now you can, just like we were doing before, we can start writing the word effect in. Here it is here. Let's grab it and pop it in like so. Let's move that over a little bit. And if we click down here, we'll see that all the available effects will pop up. So in this case, what we want is this one here, is night vision. So we're going to change that to night vision. It's going to apply to the nearest player. We're going to give it a duration of 10, which is just seconds, and an amplifier of 1. So we're not going to change anything there. If you wanted to make it shorter or stronger or longer, whatever it may be, you would change these numbers around. So let's click on play. And what we should find is that it's not going to work while I'm walking, but I got just enough light to see the ladder, but up there it's way too dark. But when I climb the ladder, night vision turns on, and I've got 10 seconds to find my way through. It's going to be about here. Perfect. And then it's gone. So my 10 seconds has passed, but there is another ladder there. So when I go to climb down that ladder, the effect is going to apply again. I can come around and make my way to the very end. So that's our effect command. You could play around with this and have so many different ideas as to what you want to do, but that's a nice simple way of using it with MakeCode. So let's look at our next grouping of MakeCode commands, essentially, is what I like to think of them as. We're going to look at the summon one. So in this case, we're going to use code to create an event whereby the chicken will spawn basically in the pen next to us whenever our player eats an apple. Okay, so I've just kind of chosen pretty random scenarios here. Now, this is the position. This 50632 8 is where the chicken needs to spawn. Where did I get that number? That is the world position. So if you look at my screen on the top left, it says position. And so those numbers move around as I move around. So that's my X, Y, and Z. Now, if I jump in this pen, roughly, I think that's the same numbers, 506, 32, 8. But I could definitely use those numbers as well. If you can't see that, you just need to hit Escape, Settings, and then you just need to scroll down and click this Show Coordinates. Make sure it's flipped on over to the right. So anything to the right is on. So what we're going to do, let's go back, and we're going to hit C for coding. And in this case, we're going to use, it's basically when something is used. So it's a player action for this case. So we're looking for this one, on item used. Now we're not using a shovel. It said when we ate an apple. So we're going to click on here and change it to an apple. And then what we're going to do is make a chicken appear. Now, we know in Minecraft, the word for making something like an animal appear is spawning. So we just type in spawn, There it is there. Makes sense that it's purple because it belongs in the mobs. And then we're going to pull that down and place it there. Now, luckily for us by default, because I've just kept this nice and simple, the default one here is chicken. So that one is chicken. If you want to change it to one of the others, you kind of just need to hover over until you find the one that you're looking for. There's no search function here for this one. Now, we need to specify the position that it's going to be at. And in this case, it always has this option here. And these are relative positions. So it means it'll spawn at that position as to where you are. Which means we know the middle one is our up and down, which means if I wrote 10, it means the chicken would spawn 10 places or 10 blocks essentially above my head. Now I have a specific world position I want it to go to. So what we do is we click here on positions on our MakeCode, and then we click here on the world one because we have an exact position we want it to go in. So let's replace that. So we just put it over the top, gets rid of the other one, and we type those in. So the NPC told us it was 506, and I've kind of written these down, so it helps to have pen and paper doing this as well. And we go 8, there we go. Now our NPC actually gave us an apple as a result, so I'm going to grab this apple, I'm going to start eating it, and there's my chicken. Okay, if I eat it again, there's 2 chickens. Again, keeps going. 3 chickens, so on and so forth. Now you could totally change that up. You could also change it so that if you do something else, a different animal appears. The options are really endless when we think about it, but that's just a nice simple example of using something and spawning something at the same time. So that's our summon. Let's go on and have a look at the fill command by using code. So in this case, I've kind of provided a little bit of a scenario. We need to be able to cross this water, but it's full of guardians. So if we were in survival mode, it would be very difficult to cross this. So what we're going to do is swimming is not an option. We need to basically like build a bridge. And so we're going to use a fill code or fill command to do that. Now we always need something to trigger it. So I've just decided that it's just for humor. It's whenever we use a fishing rod. We're not going to actually catch a guardian. It just means you just have to use a rod to do it. And that might be the secret to the game, is everyone thinks you might need to fish them out to get across. But if you just use it, if you use a fishing rod, the bridge will magically appear. So let's hit C for coding. And again, this is going to be an on item used. So because we're going to use a fishing rod. So let's change that. I'm going to scroll down a bit. There we go. And let's change this to rod. So there it is there. And then we're going to do what's called a fill command. So that does sit in blocks. You can, of course, my favorite way of doing it is just type in what you're looking for, fill. There it is there. We're going to drop it in. Now, just like we learnt before, we actually need to know the space that we want to fill from. So you need to know basically, if I'm going to go straight across, I need to know where I'm standing, where I want to start, and where I want to finish. And that's where the blocks will fill to. Now in this case, I'm just going to hit escape to go back out because my NPC tells me. So this is the positions that we want. So I need to go from this first one, this 504, 32, 14, and I need my bridge to end at those. Now if we look at that, think of that first one, 504, 32, 14, I'm pretty much, it's right there. So if you look at my position up in the top left hand corner, 504, 32, 14, this is where it's going to start, but it's going to end on the other side. And we know that because if we look, our numbers are pretty much the same, except the 14 becomes 24. So it's basically 10 blocks away is what that means. So I've got those numbers written down. So I'm going to come here. Now they are specific world positions. So we need to go position and grab the world option. Let's click on that. But we need 2 of those. And so it starts at 504, 32, 14, and then it ends at 5:04:32:24. Okay, so we're going to grab that. Let's grab ourselves a rod, and then I'm going to imagine I'm going to fish. There we go. And then there's my bridge. Now you could change that if you want to. If you wanted different types of blocks, I could go. Let's go back to code. I just drop this down and change it to whatever I want. So if I want it to be bricks, let's go with brick slabs. There we go. And I use my rod again. And they'll just change. Okay. And so now I've got my little bridge that I built to get me across. Perfect. All right, let's look at this last one here for intermediate, which is title code. So what I want to do is I want to create title message screens, which is the big text that comes up on the screen. And I kind of want this as a bit of a countdown. So like a 5, you know, the game is going to start in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 type of situation. So this one's quite simple. It just takes a lot of code because it's repetitive. And so I want this to happen when the game starts. So when someone enters my game. So let's hit on code and let's move this one up out of the way. And what I'm going to do is we're going to click on loops because this is where it is. I'm going to click on start. So when the game starts basically. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to show a message, okay, or we call them titles in the game. So if you're not sure, we could search that title. There it is, show title. And you got both there. You got the big title and then it says subtitle. That's the little text that goes underneath it. We're not going to use that for this one, but essentially, so we might write something like, you know, game. Don't forget as well that you do only have the width of the screen, so don't go too crazy with what you write. Start in, and then it's going to kind of count down. So for example, if I duplicate this, I might change that to a 5. I could duplicate that again, 4. The only problem I'm going to have here is that all of these are going to execute at the same time, which means you're not going to see anything but the last one. So I want to put little pauses in. So if I come here and I type pause, here we go. Let's click on that one. I'm going to pop it in. It's 100 milliseconds, which is pretty quick. I'm going to let's just throw an extra 0 on the end. That will give us a bit more time. So I'm going to duplicate that as well. And so we just want to pop a pause between each one. So let's just keep going with these. So let's go duplicate. That'll be 3, 2, 1. And then it will either say like 0 or go or something. So let's change that to a 3. Let's change that to a 2, a 1, and let's write go. Okay. And then I just want to duplicate these. So I'm just doing the same thing over and over again. But all I'm doing is I'm just slightly changing that message. So it's going on start. It's going to say game will start in, and then it will pause, 5, pause, 4, pause, so on and so forth. So this will just run automatically because when we hit play, it's just assuming the game is starting. So let's hit play. So there we go. Game will start in 5, 4, and you get the idea. That little pause is what we wanted to make sure that we can clearly see each message. All right, let's move on to advanced. So we've just got 2 sitting in this one, and they are similar, but a little bit different as well. So this here is what we call our test for block code. And you can do this in command blocks. I actually think it's much easier in MakeCode than in command blocks, but let's have a look at it. So essentially what we have here is that a cake is missing, it's hidden somewhere, and we need to put it down back on the shelf between the other 2 cakes. A doorway is going to appear at those exact positions, okay, and at the end it tells us exactly where the cake needs to be. So it's worth writing them down. So we're going to kind of take some things that we've already learned here around specific world positions, around filling a space, which we've already learned, And one thing we're going to add is we're going to add that testing to see if there's actually a cake sitting in that very last world position of 519337. So my cake needs to go here. So let's code it out. So essentially what's going to happen is if our player successfully puts the cake here, a doorway will open in this space. So let's click on code. Let's scroll down a bit. And like the code we did before where we were always trying to detect for a block, this time we're always testing for a block. So a little bit different, but we're taking the same idea. So let's go forever here. And what we're going to do is we're going to check whether something is happening. And basically if it does happen, and then everything else can happen at the same time. And so what we call that in coding is logic. So if something logically makes sense, make it happen. And so we're setting a condition. So here in our conditions, we have these if and else statements. And we're just going to use this if one today because we're only just checking for one thing. So we're going to grab this if and drag it out and pop it in. So basically forever, if something is true, then make something else happen. So the very first thing we want it to check for if something is true is whether the cake is sitting in the position we want it to sit in. And so what we do here is in blocks, because our cakes will form part of our blocks, is we look at this one here. It's called test for block at a position. So let's click on that and we're going to put it here where it says true. Now I've written it down. So I've written down where our specific position of our cake needs to be, which our NPC told us. And so let's go to position because we have a specific world position. Let's put that in. And in this case, it was 519337. And in this case, it's not grass. It's not searching for grass. It's searching for a cake. So we change that over. So forever, if you test for a cake at that position, then what will happen? The doorway will appear. So in this case, we're just using what we've already learned, which is the fill command. So fills were here in blocks. So let's click on fill. We're going to place it in like so. And again, I've written those positions, those exact positions that we needed. So because they're exact, we grab the world ones. Here we go. And I've just got the numbers for these at the moment are just from our NPC. So it's 516, 32, 12, and then that's where it starts. And then where we wanted it to end was 515, 33, 12. Perfect. So essentially what it's going to do is it's going to check. Now we don't want it to fill with grass. We actually want it to fill with air. Tricky little block there. So if a cake is placed in that spot, fill this area with air. Now what is that area there, that 516, 32, 12? It is essentially this little, oh, and that's still running. I'll turn that off when I next go in. It is this little space over here, which is where the air is going to be replaced. So I need to find my cake. There it is. I know where it is because I put it there. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to place it down. And there it is. It's filled with air. And so even if I just stand here in this position, you'll notice that those numbers are the same. 516, 32, 12. And then my other position, which is here, because I basically want to fill from this corner up to this corner, is where I've got those two numbers from. So essentially, let's move on and look at our very last one, which is very similar, except in this case, I want to test for blocks, not just one block. I want to test for two, so multiple blocks. So in this case, we need to feed the horses. We need to put 2 blocks of hay down, and then what will happen is that we will be teleported to the very last stage to finish off our little coding experience here. So what we're going to do is, again, we hit our C for coding, and we're going to come in and do just like we were doing before. So a lot of this stays the same. We'll even kind of just keep that there so we can see it. So we're going to be forever testing for this hay that we're going to feed our horses. And again, we're going to use some logic and a condition. So let's grab the if then condition. So if something happens, or if we basically find this hay, then we can take the player to the end of the game. But in this case, it's not just like we had one cake, now we have 2 barrels of hay. So in our logic, what we can do is add in some what we call Boolean code. Okay, so here you can see this AND option, and we've got OR options as well. And so they're our key ones. So what I want to do is I want to grab the AND and I want to put it here in the true. And that just essentially means that I can test for 2 things. So test for one block of hay and another block of hay. And you could expand this out. It could be 2, 3, 4 type, actually whatever, how many you wanted. We don't want to go too crazy, but essentially what I'm going to do then is just like what we learned before. So then I'm going to go test for. I'm going to change this to hay. There we go. And then I'm going to go my specific world position. Now this number again, it's just taking it from the NPC. So in these ones, the NPC kind of helps you out and gives you the numbers that you need. So it is 535, 32, 23, but there's 2. Okay, so what I do is I duplicate this one, I bring it over, and essentially it's just testing for the block next to it because you put the 2 hay bales side by side. So it just means that one of these numbers is going to change, and in this case it's this one. It's just the next one over, and I'm going to jump out and show you what I mean by that. So 35 and 36. So let's jump out because I've actually got them in here, and I'm going to quickly fix that because that will end up annoying me. There it is. Let's just pull that bit of code out so it doesn't keep running on us. So remember 35 and 36, that's what we were checking for. Now if you watch my coordinates, this is where you have to put the hay on these 2 yellow tiles. There's 535, so we're looking at my position numbers. There's 535. If I walk over to that one, that's 536. So that's my 2 positions. That's where those 2 numbers have come from. Now what we want to do is teleport the player, if they successfully achieve this, to the end of the game. So here in player, we're going to teleport them to an exact world position. So we go back to position and click on world. And again, this will make more sense when we actually run it because you'll see the position I chose, but you could find any world position. The easiest way to find your world position is just to go stand exactly where you want it to happen and write those numbers down. So it's 536, it's 32, 4, which by those numbers means it's just around the corner. Perfect. Now what I'm actually going to do is we might think that's finished, but I'm going to show you that there's going to be a problem with this, something we would need to debug. And so essentially in my game here, I've got some hay hidden in the shed, which the player would need to find. I'm just going to speed things up a bit by just grabbing some. And so it's tested, it's all to self. The first condition's been met perfectly. Second condition's been met. There we go. Now I'm at the end, but watch what happens when I try to walk away. I keep getting teleported back, and you can see that running. And the reason for that is it's constantly testing that space, and there's always hay there, so I can actually never escape. So there's a nice little way of fixing this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our code. We'll need to just pull this out for a second, and that will stop that from happening. Let's punch a wall. It's not too secretive, to be honest, but there we go. It's just in there, hidden away. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have to get rid of these. There we go. And because what's what we want to happen is we want to be teleported, and then we want them to go. We want them to disappear. And so we're just going to take another skill that we've learnt, and so we're going to fill that space with air. So let's pop this back in now. And so what's going to happen after we teleport is we're going to go fill with air those exact same spaces. So this is really easy to do, because what you do is you click here. We want to fill that space. So let's just duplicate it. And I want to fill this space as well and duplicate it. And so what will happen is that I'll put the hey down, I'll be teleported, and we won't see it happen because the player will already get teleported. Then the hey will get replaced with air and the code will stop running. So let's hit play. Let's go hey, and the second hey, and there we go. And you can see I can kind of freely move around. If I go back out, what you'll notice is the hey is actually gone. It's kind of reset itself, which will stop that little bug from happening. Alright, so that is it for these. Don't forget you can download these. You can also get the OneNote that goes along with it for teaching. I hope you have a bit of fun. I enjoy using MakeCode for game design, and we will see you again soon. Cheers.